Okay, hi everyone. So we're going to be talking about the MTTS 1, 2, and 3 standards for technology. We're going to be discussing the legal issues, the ethical issues, and the safety issues that are in technology and how this affects students and teachers. And we're also going to be going over some tips of how students and teachers can address these issues in the classroom. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to be talking about some of the tips, some of the issues, and then as well as tips for students of what they can do to help these issues in the classroom. Okay. So, okay. Just give me one moment. Can you see it, Allie?
What am I supposed to be seeing?
My presentation.
No.
Okay. Give me 1 second. All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So legal, ethical, and safety issues in technology for students. So first we're going to start with the legal issues, which are copyright, fair use, and Creative Commons. So copyright protects the rights of the creator of products. So it keeps the credit for that person so that other people aren't able to take credit for individual original work. So some of the work that can be copyrighted are poetry, music, movies, video games, novels, photographs, paintings, plays. And the goal for copyright law is to protect the individual who created these laws or these new products so that their idea can't be stolen. So the Copyright Act of 1976, which basically talks about only the copyright owner has the rights to make copy of the work, sell or lend the work to others, perform the work publicly, or display their work. And how some students can avoid copywriting in school so that they aren't breaking these laws and they aren't taking the credit for other people's work is that they cite all their sources when researching on the internet or using CD resources. Avoid copying and pasting. Try to reorganize and rewrite information so you avoid plagiarism. And then before using a picture, graph, chart, or illustration, make sure there is no copyright on that. So fair use. Fair use is the legal ability to use parts of copyrighted materials without permission from the owner. So this is one way to kind of avoid the copyright laws. Some reasons why people are able to use these parts of copyrighted pieces is if the copyright statute believes the work will be beneficial to share for others. So if the copyright statute basically thinks that the work is beneficial for the public, then there are some ways that the public will have access to this work. Some of the factors that are determining for the fair use are before using copyrighted piece, an evaluator must make sure that the piece meets all 4 factors. So the first factor is what is the work? They have to determine what the work is to determine whether it's going to be beneficial for others or not. 2, what is the work being used for? So some ways that they could use this work for fair use would be for educational purposes. 3, what amount or portion of the work is being used? And 4, what will the effect of the unauthorized copying of the work have on the market value? So what will the unauthorized copying, if someone else uses someone's work, how will that affect the owner of the actual piece of work? And what materials can be used? So this is good for students to know. So for music, clips that are 10% of the song is not breaking any copyright rules. Videos, clips that are used that are 10% of the song, or I'm sorry, of the video, or 3 minutes of the whole video. And these videos must be purchased and approved by the school beforehand and only used for learning purposes. And then images, if 5 images or less are used from the same artist. So Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that allows copyright holders to share their work for others' use. For example, educational purposes. Creative Commons allows the owner to hold some of the rights to their original piece, but allows their work to be shared. In order for a piece of work to be part of Creative Commons, it has to have a copyright. And Creative Commons allows students to use different pictures, music, videos, and sounds without breaking copyright laws. And this is because the owner has allowed people to use certain parts or portions of their work. So some examples of some Creative Commons sites would be CC Mixer, which provides music, Pics for Learning, sorry for that typo.com, which provides images, some PBS recordings, which provides videos, and then Wikimedia Commons, which provides sounds and videos. So ethic issues. Some ethic issues that are brought up in technology are gender, racial, and socioeconomic divides. The first one is gender. So women are actually more likely to be anxious, less informed, and more confused than males when working with computers and technology. It's understood that boys have a better understanding of spatial learning, which occurs through the use of computer software games and due to their experience with video games. So some way to help this gender divide between boys and girls is to use software that is gender neutral, so that appeals to both men and women. Provide opportunities for girls to interact with computers alone or with other groups of girls, encouraging learning technology for girls, and expose young women to successful women in the field of computer technology. So if young women are able to work alongside with successful women in computer and technology and kind of work hand in hand through technology, maybe they will be less anxious, more informed, and more willing to work with computers. So the next divide is the racial divide. Racial divide refers to the gap between races that use informational technology. The gap could refer to the use of internet, computers, video games, or cell phones. The divide also looks at different purposes that races use for informational technology. And the gap between races and technology is linked to not being able to afford a computer, internet access, and those resources not being available to them. So how to solve this or try and resolve some racial divide issues in the classroom is get all students involved in computer lab time at a young age. Have open computer labs to the community so families have access. I think this is really important because you'll be able to have a strong relationship between the student, parent, and teacher in trying to support the use of technology in learning. And try to raise money for computers, especially for low-class schools. So being able to raise money and actually have the resources for these schools and allow these students to have technology in the classroom will help better their learning as well. So just some statistics on racial divide. From this chart, you can see that in the US in 2000, Asians and whites were the two races to have the highest percent in home computer access. So again, I think this really does go back to socioeconomics and that the minorities tend to live in lower socioeconomic areas, so they aren't able to have this luxury of computer and technology. As you'll see, these issues kind of all, bounce off of each other. And I think race and socioeconomic divide are two that are really interconnected. So socioeconomic divide refers to the gap between people's income and their ability to afford for access to internet and computer resources. So some statistics that I found are that the digital divide in American society suggests that through research, socioeconomic status and the availability of technology have a strong relationship to one another. Some statistics that I saw were low socioeconomic households in 2000 reported only 35% had internet access. Lower middle socioeconomic had 59% internet access. Upper middle socioeconomic households had 73% access to internet in their homes, and then the top socioeconomic households had 83% had access to internet in 2000. So that really does quite clearly show that the lower the socioeconomics, the less people are able to afford internets and computers in their household, just simply based off their income and money resources that are available to them. So how can we solve some of these socioeconomic divides in communities? So some ways that we can try to, shrink the gap is to write letters to the Board of Education to discuss the importance of technology in the classroom and budgeting, write letters to congressmen and senators about the need for technology. And one that I thought was really important was to start getting the community aware and involved in raising money in community centers. I think awareness is a really powerful tool. If you're able to get the community aware of the use of technology and how much technology can benefit their students' learning, I think that would help to raise funds and provide these resources for these students. So then safety issues. Safety issues consist of cyberbullying and AUP, or acceptable use policy. So we'll start with cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is very serious and is taken very seriously in all schools. Cyberbullying is bullying that occurs through online resources like computers, cell phone, and other devices. Cyberbullying can cause long-term effects such as hopelessness, sadness, nervousness, and can even cause death through suicides. And cyberbullying can occur through YouTube, Facebook, all that social media, email, text messages. And cyberbullying is usually seen through the spread of harmful rumors through the internet, or to send harmful messages to other individuals. So what's the facts? So according to Cyberbullying Research Center, 50% of adolescents have been cyberbullied at some point, and 20% of adolescents have reported to be cyberbullied regularly. In addition, National Crime Prevention claims that 43% of teens have been subjected to cyberbullying in some form. Of the adolescents that were bullied, girls were twice more likely than boys. Actually, the numbers were 22.1% girls and 10.8% boys. So cyberbullying is definitely a serious issue and is clearly prevalent in those numbers. So serious that 49 states have laws against bullying itself, but 47 states have laws against cyberbullying. The consequence of breaking these laws in these states is a criminal offense. So what to do if cyberbullying happens to me? This is really important for students to hone in on. So if you're subjected to cyberbullying, or you know someone who's cyberbullied, it's important to not engage with the bully. Get an adult right away. And some ways to avoid cyberbullying is never to share personal information on the internet with others. And to only use sites or software that have been approved by your parent, teacher, administration, any higher up adults. So acceptable use policy. Acceptable use policy informs the school district and the community about the expectations the county has for students and how they use the internet. The acceptable use policy can be found in the student handbook. The policy outlines the specific expectations that the county has for the students when using the internet. The acceptable use policy may vary a little bit based on county, but it should say about the same things. So for example, in Carroll County, the acceptable use policy was that school computers and internet use is only for learning purposes. Only software that is downloaded by school officials is allowed on the school computers. Students should understand and follow the copyright guidelines. Students should keep personal passwords and other information to themselves. And when using the computer or internet, students are expected to use proper manners and treat others the way you want to be treated. So going along with this, cyberbullying is not accepted and consequences will be followed. Another thing to consider for students is all files are accessible to all administration. And then some tips for students. It's really important that students look over this handbook and understand the rules and guidelines and expectations that their school has for using school technology, and to only go on sites and use software that is approved by a teacher or administrator. And don't forget to back up their files. Students, this will be your responsibility at least in Carroll County schools. And then these are my references that I have for my information. And that's how legal, ethic, and safety issues in technology relates to students. So.
All right. Well, I had the same thing. Just from a teacher's perspective. Let me get that. Brianne, is it working this time?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. All right. So the copyright issues. With the increase of technology-based instruction, there has been an increased need for teachers to be aware of the copyright issues.
Allie,
Yes.
Did you click on the second slide? Because I'm still on the first one.
I did.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
I see the first slide.
Can you see the second slide now?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So it allows authors to be rewarded for their original work as well as for the public to have access to it. It includes ideas, film, paper, software, things like that. They're all substance for copyright. Copyright notice is not needed in order to ensure copyright protection. While using technology in the classroom, it is imperative to remember that infringement of a copyright is illegal. So then some tips for that. The teacher needs to model for students how to find acceptable sources online. When using material from others in lessons, the teacher needs to get permission and cite the material as well. Also, show students how to properly cite material that is used. This is especially important for the upper grades, as students will obviously need to know how to do this when they go to college. Creative Commons. This provides a set of copyright licenses that are free for the public to use. For students to be able to use content that is less restrictive, you can go to the Creative Commons website and access the CC licensed works by using the search engines that are provided on that website. They include pictures, music, videos, things like that. To have a Creative Commons license, it has to have a copyright, and it allows original work to be obviously so much more accessible. And then tips for that include showing students the symbol so that they're able to recognize it. I thought that it would be good for a teacher to create a lesson in which students explore the Creative Commons website so that they could gain a better understanding of why it's important and why it matters. When introducing this concept, have students watch the video introducing the Creative Commons, as it is an understandable introduction to the concepts of Creative Commons. Okay, fair use. This lets people use parts of a copyrighted work. After copyrighted work expires, it is sent to the public domain and anybody can freely access it. It includes search engines, news reportings, parodies, criticisms, commentaries, things like that. I know you mentioned it, but the 4 factors for determining fair use include determining what the work is, what it's being used for, what portion of the work is being used, and what will the effect of the unauthorized copying of the work have on the market value. And then obviously for teachers, it's important to remember that for motion media, it's limited up to 10% or 3 minutes, whichever is less. Textual material is limited to up to 10% or 1,000 words, again, whichever one is less. And then music, lyrics, and music video are limited to 10%, but no more than 30 seconds of the music from an individual musical work. Some tips. In groups, allow students to create something like a song or a skit based on a movie, and then they can perform it to the class. Review the Copyright Act yourself as a teacher so you know exactly what is acceptable and what is not. And then when using a piece of work, ask yourself if it transforms the work completely, as that will be more likely to be acceptable. Okay, so some ethical issues. The first one that I looked at was gender divide. There is a gender gap in terms of careers that requires the use of computers as well as computer education. It's very, very large. Women in academic computer science has largely diminished within the last decade. Studies have revealed that males are more interested in using computers as they find them more fun and important than females do. Also, males tend to have a more positive attitude toward the use of computers than females. So then some tips in closing that divide. For teachers, provide each student with the same opportunities. Encourage girls to participate in STEM. When using technology, don't give tasks based on gender. And in the younger grades, include a gender-neutral area for all students. Okay, next was racial divide. The racial digital divide is usually correlated with outside factors. I know you mentioned that, such as education and computer access. Some statistics, 44% of whites have access to home computers, while only 29% of blacks do. Because of this, white people are more likely to use the internet on a daily basis. Asians tend to get news from the internet at a greater rate than whites, as well as download more music from the internet than blacks, and retrieve political information. Also, Asians use the internet more than blacks to search for jobs and buy or sell stocks online more often than whites. However, they are less likely to search for health information or listen to music online. Okay, so some tips for the racial divide. If a project that is assigned requires a computer, and you know certain students don't have access to one at home, if you have time, maybe allow them to stay after school to use the school computer. Tell students where the nearest library is, and reach out to local nonprofit organizations to discuss collecting, refurbished technology. The socioeconomic divide. So there's a technology gap for students living in lower socioeconomic areas. In one study, when students were asked if they had access to computers at home, 76.4% of Title I students indicated that they did, while 94.3% of non-Title I students indicated they had access at home. The gap in home internet access was even larger, with 86.7% of non-Title I students having access, with only 65.5% of Title I students having access. So it's our job to try to make technology more accessible for students. Okay, some tips. Realize that assignments to be done at home that require a computer obviously might not be realistic for some students, so you need to be willing to work with them. Make sure each student has the same amount of technological resources. So again, if you're requiring the use of a computer, let them stay after school or come at another time. Integrate technology within your classroom. So some students don't have access to technology at home, so exposing it to them during the school day will be really beneficial. Okay, safety issues, the acceptable use policy, or AUP. It's a policy that provides a framework of how schools and its district believe the community should behave when using technology. An acceptable use policy, or AUP, should define what is considered acceptable behavior of those that are using the internet. Most schools have acceptable and unacceptable behaviors listed in that policy. Some may also prohibit certain things such as plagiarism or going on certain websites. So obviously teachers need to ensure that students are protected while using technology. Some tips include clearly explain to students what sites are allowed to be visited before they get on the computer, limit use to sites that are appropriate for the age level being taught, and explain the dangers of being online and why they need to follow the rules so that they stay safe. All right, and then finally, cyberbullying. So with increased use of technology, cyberbullying has obviously become a really important issue. It's seen as a harmful act that is done through electronic means by an individual or group of people. It's important to know that cyberbullying can easily get out of control and needs to be addressed immediately. And some statistics, 30% of teenagers are targeted through cyberbullying while in school, and most incidences take place while students are in the 7th and 8th grades. Some tips: educate your students on what exactly cyberbullying is and how it makes others feel. Don't tolerate any form of bullying, and tell students that if they hear or know about a case of cyberbullying, to tell an adult. I'm not really sure why my references are not here, but they're on the handout. Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.